and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the N+1 podcast. My name is Adam, and from Miller's Custom Guitars and the N+1 podcast. This is the show that we bring on amazing guests from all different hobbies and interests and passions, and we just talk to them about the things that they're interested in, and we just go down the rabbit hole together. We've had on artists and musicians, and what are some interesting things that we've talked about on the show? We've had health experts. We've had I keep talking about this one because it's so fresh on my mind. We had my sister come on to talk about her passion for home birth, and she just recently gave birth. So we're still very excited about the new addition to the family. But yeah, just whatever people are interested in. I'm a very curious person myself. My son gets it from me. I just want to learn. I want to hear about stuff. I want to see how the sausage is made, so to speak. And so. Yeah, I want to talk to people and find out what's going on and why they're so excited about it, what's passionate about it. But not just that. I don't want to just know what they're excited about. I want to know what is next for them on their journey. What is the N+1? And that's what the name of the show means, is what is N+1 on their journey? If N is the number of guitars you currently have, what is N+1? What's the next guitar in the stand on your journey? What is next? And that's what I talk to people about. And today I am joined by a guest. I'm joined by David Reid. David, welcome.
Hello.
And David and I have kind of brushed up against each other through a Facebook group, and he's one of the recent additions to the administrator personnel on that website. He's helped me a couple times when I've had questions about how to edit, because I know that he has a whole YouTube channel that's dedicated to educating people on editing. And so when I was looking for guests who are passionate about things, I said I should talk to Dave about editing, because when I talk to people about making videos, they say, I love making videos, except for editing. Editing is the worst part of videos, except for Dave here, has a whole YouTube channel that's all about editing. He's so passionate about it, so much so that he wants to share his passion and knowledge. So I wanted to bring Dave in and to talk about editing. We use the same software. It's Davinci Resolve. It's awesome software. It's free. If you're interested in video editing, I recommend you check it out. It's so cool. It's a fully integrated video editing software. It's great because it's got everything you need. It's got a state of the art color grading. It's got full audio processing. It's got everything, and it's got different ways to edit. You could use the speed editor, and you could use it's awesome. And speed editor. Yes, he's got the speed editor. Yeah. I wanted to talk to Dave, and we're going to get into the questions, but let's just say, hey, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. It's Saturday morning. It's super early. I know you're in Canada, so maybe it's not so early there, but I'm so glad that you could come in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe your channels a little bit, and what you do, and then we'll get into it.
I'll start with kind of what got me into doing the video editing. It starts a little bit earlier than that. I've been into computers. I started learning programming in 1981. So back, in the infancy of the personal computer days. And I've just kind of kept with it. I had a natural knack for it. And then I got into fixing computers and built my first computer from a box of parts, I think in 1992. And I've had several computer businesses over the years doing different things. We had a pretty big company that was fairly successful doing, graphic design and web pages and online programming, that kind of thing. And then I got really sick for a while. I was actually bedridden for about 10 years.
Oh, no.
And almost died a couple of times. So I was in pretty bad shape. And I started doing some health research and getting away from the standard medical treatments and getting into other stuff, and managed to get out of bed and start getting a little healthier. And once I had been on massive painkillers for a lot of years, so once I got off of those and my brain started coming back alive, I wanted to do something with myself.
Sure.
So I knew that I was about 15 years behind on computer tech, so I knew going back and trying to do technician work wasn't going to work. And with my back the way it wasn't really feasible to do tech work, as an actual job anyway. So I was looking for something, and of course I was also way behind on web page stuff, so I couldn't really get into doing that professionally again. So I figured, well, let's try something new. And right along about that time, I had a couple of friends that heard I was kind of out of bed and able to do a few things. So I started getting the odd phone calls for computer help.
Yeah.
And because I was so behind, I couldn't just help them over the phone like I normally used to. So I would have to research it. And then I figured, well, I'll just do a video. Because I used to do tutoring and training and teaching classes and stuff. So it seemed like kind of a natural way to look at doing it. And YouTube was kind of becoming a thing by this point. So I figured, well, let's try making a video. And I did, I recorded 3 or 4 videos. I edited them in, what's up? I was on a MacBook Pro at the time. iMovie was the one that came with that. And it was terrible. So, I thought, well, maybe it's just because I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe that's the issue. But I started doing a little research and figured out that maybe I should take a look at this Davinci Resolve. This was back in version 16.
Wow, that long ago, huh?
Yeah. So I started I started learning that, and at the same time I was making these videos for my friends, showing them how to do stuff, and they really liked it, and I found I really enjoyed making them. So after I did about 7 or 8 videos, I said, maybe this should be its own channel. And because I was also looking at some other channels on how to start a YouTube channel and make them successful and all that kind of a thing. So I split off its own channel, and I think I started the new channel and uploaded videos June 1st, 2021.
There you go.
And then I just started making videos. And let me tell you, the first 25, 30 videos were pretty bad.
Yeah, they always are. Yeah. Like I know that I go back, and it's so weird because like my very first YouTube video, it's got like 25,000 views, right? It's I don't know, something about it, it resonates with people. I go back and watch it, and it's got a pretty good like narrative arc. And this is like on our Facebook group that we're in. People are ask for advice sometimes, and the advice I always give to people is like, don't forget that we're storytellers. Like even if we're educational, even if it's a travel vlog, like don't forget to like put some sort of like narrative. People want to hear stories. So like in my first video, there's like a little bit of there's just like some bit of like a story to my thing, and I think it just like resonates just right. And it's not a great video, and of course I'm a guitar person, so it's like recording guitar sounds and comparing them through an iPhone microphone, which is not ideal. In my opinion, it's like the point is you can still tell a difference. And even through an iPhone microphone, being able to tell a difference proves that that there's a difference. And I've never been able to recapture that magic, but it gave me that bug. I had Adam Miller. He's the founding member of our Facebook group. And he was my third guest. But it's funny because that first video, I went back and looked at the source files, and there was 4 clips that I edited in that video. And my recent series of videos, there's over 50 clips. There's like 100 gigs, you know, because of all my B-roll and all this stuff, and it gets like 100 views, you know, so whatever. But you know, that's how the progression, right? But so the thing I always like to say to people is, if someone says to you, like, video editing, what's that? So what I like to say is, well, describe it like I'm 5. Like what's going on? How would you even describe like what this thing is to someone? And you know, so people like have a vague notion of what editing is. If you know, like I had a movie making class in college. I had one, and now I edit videos. But if someone doesn't really know, can you describe what editing is and what it does and what the purpose of it is?
Well, everyone out there, I'm sure, has watched TV or gone and seen a movie or something. And so editing is just the process of taking all these hundreds of hours of footage that they shoot for a movie or a TV show and cutting out the stuff that doesn't work and just keeping the good stuff. And then you need to add things like text and special effects and do some sound processing, and you're always going to have to fix the color a little bit. And that's basically all video editing is in a nutshell. It's just you're kind of covering a lot of bases, doing a lot of things. When you're a one-man show, you know, you're wearing a lot of hats. So on a big operation like a Hollywood movie or something, you're going to have teams of people that are just doing nothing but editing raw footage, and another team of people just doing the audio. But what's exciting about Davinci Resolve is that, you know, like you were saying, it rolls everything into one package. It'll even do the special effects and compositing and that kind of a thing as well. So.
Yeah, you're right, exactly right. That in a big time production, I mean, they might split it. They might split things up. You know, really detailed. You know, someone's just doing color. Someone's just doing compositing. Someone's just doing sound. Someone's just doing whatever. You know, someone's doing special effects. Someone's doing all these different things, but they might even refine it more than that. And there's so many different things in a big time Hollywood, thing. So, but even smaller crews, one of my favorite channels is the Corridor channel. Have you seen them on? They've got a team that's, I don't know, probably 8 people. But even them, they're splitting things up and they're doing different things at different stages. They're nowhere near like a Hollywood thing. But just like you said with DaVinci has different ways you can split those things up or do them together. And I have the free version. I think you said you have the paid version. But doesn't the paid version have like a sharing feature where you can collaborate with other users?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never used it. But yeah, now that you do have to pay a subscription for. It's like $5 a month, which is no big deal.
And I think, that would be so useful in a big team where you rather than trying to export that footage and send it over to someone else and like all that stuff, like if you just like basically a Google Docs for editing, you could basically work on your part and have them work on their part. And
yeah, exactly. Basically the way it works is you have a central repository for all the main raw footage, and then everybody that's working on it, they get their chunk in proxies. And you can work on your proxy. When they first started it, only one person could work on a particular piece of file at the same time. But now they've refined it so you can actually have several people working on the same file simultaneously. And it's pretty cool. It's not something I can use at this point because some of the features you have to have an actual NVIDIA brand video card. And I'm an AMD guy, so that kind of leaves me out for that. But some of the features will still work with AMD as far as that goes. The main package, there's no subscription. You pay once and then you get upgrades forever. and it's a really reasonable price. I actually got a bundle. Like when I bought this when I bought the speed editor, the studio version came bundled with it, and I paid, I think it was $300 American, which is, I mean, that would
that's like that's the price of the paid version of the software. So
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, basically, if you buy any piece of hardware, because that's actually their main business is hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know much of the history of Davinci, but when they first started, the main Davinci software was just color correction, and it was all hardware based.
Right.
And they had systems that like television studios and movie companies, Hollywood movie productions, were using just for the color correction.
Yeah, and I know that. Well, I've heard that they give the software out for free because they're not trying to sell software. They're trying to sell hardware. They're trying to sell cameras. They're trying to sell the other stuff, and they make these amazing Blackmagic cameras. And the software is like optimized for their cameras. And that's why they, it's like, well, we'll make, this amazing software. And if you use our cameras, it's going to be like bread and butter. But I don't know if that's true. I just have heard that.
That's basically what it is. That's kind of why they do what they do now. Like when back in the day when you were first looking at getting into the hardware for doing their color correction, it was like $100,000 to get one of their setups.
Jeez.
And then they as they actually almost went under at one point, and they got bought out by another company. And this other company kind of saw the vision of, buying some other supporting companies. So that's when they started getting into the video editing. And then they bought Fusion, a company called Fusion, which they now have their Fusion, which handles the compositing and special effects. And then they bought out Fairlight, which is why that tab is called Fairlight.
Yeah.
And that's for the audio processing. And then they just started developing the software from there. And now they've basically kind of taken it over and redone everything.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely incredible software. And as they were doing this, they kept lowering the price. Like back when I got in at Davinci 16, I think the software at that point was about $1,200 if you wanted to buy it.
Wow. And
then when they came out with version 17 is when they dropped the price down to $300 US.
Yeah.
And that's when I got the speed editor. When they came out with the speed editor, I saw what it could do and how it could improve my workflow. And I'd already been looking at possibly buying the software. So one of my main clients that I do a lot of editing for, I do 2 videos a week minimum for him. And I called him one day and I was all excited about this thing. And he said, well, maybe I should just buy it for you. So that's what he did. He sent me the money, and I went and I bought the speed editor, which included the software. And
there you go.
Man, it immediately saved me a ton of time.
Really?
Yeah, I probably saved 4 or 5 hours a week when I first started, and since then it saved me a lot more time as I've been able to take on more and more work.
So I've had questions because like on Davinci Resolve, there's those tabs, right? There's like media, there's cut, edit, and other ones. But when I first started, I used the cut page, and then I've basically never used the cut page. I always use the edit page. But then I've heard people say, like, if you're using the speed editor, that cut page is like magic. Have you found that to be the case?
Not really. I mean, I've used it and it's got some nice features, but I don't use multicam stuff. Where the cut page really excels is if you're using proper multicam. when you got an actual time sync device that sends out the
Mm-hmm.
codes and all the cameras and audio recording is tied into it. And, then it's all synced with time codes. And then you can go through, it's got a bunch of buttons on there that cover your different multicams. So I think it can handle up to 9 different cameras.
Oh, dang. Nice.
And so it's really easy to just cut between them, because when you're on the cut page, it'll show you a layout with all the little camera shots. And then you've got another window over on the side that's showing you what is actually going to be displayed. And then you can just switch from camera to camera. And it makes it a breeze to do. But since I don't really use multicam stuff, it's not really that useful to me. So I just do everything in the edit page. When they first came out with the speed editor, it was more geared to be used on the cut page.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could use it on the editing page, but a lot of the features weren't there. But as they've done more updating on the software and gotten more requests from people, you can now do just about anything on the editing page that you could on the cut page with it. And because I'm the geek that I am, I wanted to make stuff look a little fancier, so I started learning how to use Fusion, and so I've actually created my own special effects. So when you look at my more recent tutorials, you'll see where I'll zoom into stuff. So I've got like a kind of a circular zoom, and the rest of the screen darkens a little bit, and I can move that around and expand that, change the zoom levels and stuff. So I built that, and then the little narrator panel, which has, yours truly with a nice little border around it, that kind of a thing. I built that as well.
Wow, that's awesome.
And the one where it does the zooming and being able to move that around, I actually sell that on my website.
Interesting.
People can have it for free, actually, if they want, and then there's buttons inside of it if you want to donate later, if you think it's worth it. Or you can pay a few bucks up front. There's a few different.
That's awesome.
There's like a little PayPal thing you can do.
Nice.
And the one that I use for the narrator panel, I've just got to tidy that up and package that to sell as well. I kind of got behind on stuff because I started another channel covering kind of my health journey. So
yeah,
I've been kind of splitting myself between the two worlds. So the new channel is kind of taken over my attention for a lot of things. It's actually growing faster than the original channel ever did. But
yeah, well, that's good to hear. I'm kind of in the same boat because I have I consider it my main channel, which is my guitar channel. Except for this is the one that I put all my effort into, because I try to release episodes every other week, every 2 weeks. And because of the release schedule, and that kind of the grind of releasing every 2 weeks. It was every week for a while. I had to switch it to every 2 weeks. This is the one that it's like, I'm always, sitting at the computer and editing, even though the other channel is the one with the subs and the one that I'll work for 6 months, 8 months, sometimes on a video. I'll put money, because it's a guitar repair video sometimes. So sometimes I'm spending money on parts or whatever. So in my mind, that's like my main channel, and this, especially if you look at the subs or whatever. But this is the one that I'm putting all my time into, and that's the one I'm putting all my money into. I don't know. So anyway, I wanted to get into the meat of our actual questions. That was a great kind of back. What do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for?
Backstory.
Backstory, yes. That's a great backstory and kind of set up to let us go forward. But as far as editing goes, what are some misconceptions that you've come across? Maybe, or that you've had about editing, maybe as you've gotten into it more, that you held or that you found?
Well, I mean, one of the first things I thought was that it must be extremely difficult to do, and that it has to be really super complicated. And
otherwise, why would people hate it so much?
Yeah, and I think what it is people are afraid to kind of jump in and try stuff for fear they might break something.
Right.
And over the years, I've taught a lot of people computer stuff, both one-on-one tutoring and classes and that kind of thing. And that's usually, the biggest fear. They're afraid if they try something out of the ordinary that they're going to break it. And although that possibility exists, it doesn't happen very often, as long as you take a few steps to make sure you've got everything backed up. That way, if something does fall apart, you can restore it and start over, kind of a thing.
Right.
And probably the best thing that I developed when I started learning how to do the video editing is I tried to learn one new skill every week, like some either a completely new skill or refine or expand a skill I already had. And I think people are afraid to just put in the time. They think it's going to be too complicated and hurt their brain or something. And I've run across a lot of people that have said, "Oh, I don't want to try Davinci. There's too much stuff. It's too complicated." And yet, if you actually get into it and start to use it, you can keep it simple at first. You can do the basic stuff. They've got a lot of automation that helps you out with that. And then as you get better and you want to kind of get a little more complicated, you can start building some of your own tools.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there. I mean, this is so funny. I just shared this on our Facebook group, which is that my 10-year-old son, he not very often. He's like I said, he's kind of like me, where he's kind of interested in everything. He wants to know how everything works, and and all that stuff. And he every once in a while likes to make these silly videos. He gets it in his head. I want to make this silly video, and they're so ridiculous and funny. But the thing is, somehow he ropes mom into filming them, but then he wants to edit them. And so when he started making them, I showed him how to use Shotcut, which is what I was using before I got into Davinci. And I stopped using Shotcut because I was just running into all these roadblocks to make the videos that I wanted to make. It was just every single video, I'm just like slamming my head into all these problems. And I was just like, this software is not cutting it for me anymore. And the funny thing is, on the previous video, and it wasn't even that, it was just like, it was like how kids do, they do a gaming video. He did a screen capture of him playing a video game, and he had edited that together. And he was bumping into the same stinking limitations, like audio processing and all these something and I had tried to tell him before, hey, what you're trying to do, it's really hard in Shotcut, and it's really easy in Davinci. I don't want to learn new software. I know how to use this one. And then I came back to him again, and he goes, Dad, I want to film this video, but here's the thing. I want to learn how to do this. And he had actually pulled the footage in, and he was trying to do this stuff. And I'm like, Ezra, what you're trying to do is really hard in Shotcut, and it's very easy in Davinci. Let me just show you. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Let me just show you how easy it is. And I pulled the clips in, and what he was trying to do, it's all these filters and all this stuff in Shotcut, and in Davinci, it's 2 clicks. It's like click, 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 click. And I'm like, see? And he goes, oh, okay. And, so there you go. So I don't know if he started working on it yet, but it's like, Davinci, I think people, because there's so much it can do, and honestly, like part of the big appeal for Davinci is the color grading, which is state of the art. And then you go to the color grading page, and it can be overwhelming. And it's so deep. You can go so deep with color grading. But it doesn't have to be. You can just put your footage in, especially if you have a good camera that looks pretty good anyway. You can just skip the color grading page if your footage looks good. The color grading is just the cherry on the top. And honestly, when I started using Davinci, I was color grading exactly the same way I was color grading with Shotcut, and it was fine. You just use the same principles, and it's a little bit better now. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that DaVinci can start really simple and can grow with you as you grow as an editor.
Do you know about auto color?
There's the A button on the
Yep,
left. I
that's the
don't
auto
like
color.
it. I don't like it.
Maybe it depends on the raw footage you're using. I if you're using footage from from a camera phone, like an
Mm-hmm.
iPhone or a Android phone or something like that, it does a pretty decent job.
Yeah,
So
what I do every single time, I will click the A button first and be like, that's not what I'm looking for. And then I'll click undo and then I'll do the color myself every single time. A, nope, undo, and then go myself. I don't have training on this. So, I just do what I do, which is I do the white balance, I do the tint, I do the contrast, balance the highs and the lows. I'm not doing power windows. I'm not doing any of that stuff. And I don't have the paid version, so I'm not doing the AI, any of that stuff.
yeah,
I'm just basically balancing it, balancing the contrast and doing the saturation and
it could be that the auto color works better on the paid version. Maybe they've got some extra AI stuff in there. But the thing that a lot of people miss when they're doing the color correction is setting the type of setting up your actual codecs for the type of camera you're using. Like if you're using an iPhone, you need to set up for the Rec 2020 on one side of it, and then for the Gamma, it's like Rec 2021 landscape,
mm.
and that basically turns it into Rec 709.
Yeah, see, I don't understand those words.
Uh,
See, exactly. I don't know. I don't.
Well, depending on the type of camera you have, it might even have the footage in there. I'm actually going to be doing a tutorial probably. Well, it'll be after we get moved. We're moving at the end of the month here, so probably sometime in late September, early October, I'll probably do one showing people how to set that stuff up.
Yeah.
Because if you pick the right, a lot of the modern cameras that people are using, anything 5 or 6 years old and newer kind of a thing, they'll have it just in a drop down list. You just pick the type of codec your camera is using, and a lot of times it'll have the actual name and model of your camera. So you convert the footage to that first, and then that does most of the work for you, and then you can just make some minor adjustments from there.
Anyway, so the next question I have for you is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced when it comes to editing, or have you had any specific bad experiences?
Well, I know one of the big challenges I had was when they went from Davinci 16 to Davinci 17.
Mm-hmm.
There were some real big bugs. If you were doing something new, it was fine. But if you had a project that you had done in version 16 and you went to bring it into 17 and do some more work on it, there were all kinds of big issues. And if you didn't back up your database ahead of time, you were kind of stuck. You couldn't revert it. You had to be able to restore a saved database. So that was that was one challenge. I think the biggest challenge I had overall was learning Fusion. Fusion
Mm-hmm.
took a while to wrap my brain around. I could do the very basic stuff and I could follow along tutorials, but I didn't really understand what I was doing.
Yeah.
And until I really understood how to lay out the nodes and pipe everything together, I had some real challenges getting that going. It probably took about a year of constant work for me to really wrap my brain around how Fusion works and start making my own tools and turning them into actual plugins that people could install on their own computers. So that's probably the most difficult part of the DaVinci suite is Fusion.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, color correction is no walk in the park either.
Yeah.
But if you want to really learn color correction, the best channel to go watch is Darren Moston. Now, he's been using Davinci color correction for probably close to 20 years.
Yeah.
He used to work for the BBC,
Mm-hmm.
so he did it every day for work. And not only does he really know what he's doing, he really knows how to teach it easily.
Yeah.
So he's probably one
I'll
of the
have to
best
check that
guys to
out.
learn color correction from. Yeah, Darren Moston. I
Yeah.
think it's Mostyn.
You know, you're making your videos, and you actually have two different channels. And I don't want to shortchange your other channels, which is super important, and we'll give you a little bit of room to talk about that too towards the end. But why do you even do this? Like, what fills your bucket, especially when it comes to editing? Because, like I mentioned at the top, like editing is something that most people hate, right? And you, or they only do it because they have to do it, and yet you've kind of embraced it and dove into it. You know, when you're editing a video or teaching others, what fills your bucket?
I think it's just having the understanding of the nuts and bolts of it. I've always been a kind of a tech weenie. And it's just, there's something about tech and understanding it and having the knack for it that I do, that it's exciting to me. It makes me feel useful. It feeds that passion. And probably 95% of the people I run into, I usually have a better understanding of tech than 95% of people that I come across. In its own way, that's really rewarding. When you can take somebody that's having some really serious issues with tech, and you can take a look at their stuff, solve it in a couple of minutes, show them how to do it so that they can solve it in the future. To me, that's very satisfying. It's kind of that thing of, giving a man a fish, and you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, and he'll feed himself for life.
Yeah.
And that, I really find a lot of satisfaction from that whole process of showing people how to be able to do stuff on their own.
Nice.
I guess it just scratches an itch to feel like I'm doing something useful in the world. It's just always been a passion. I've always had the knack of being able to figure it out. I'm like a dog with a bone, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's usually not in me to give up. And I think the only time I've given up on stuff was when I was actually getting sick and couldn't do it anymore physically. But
Wow.
that's what kind of brought me back into it was, when I started getting a little better, I needed to feel useful, like I was doing something.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about editing is that you really get to impart some of your own personality and your personal style, your personal sense of humor. You can make something funny by how you put a cut in or how long you leave a pause or whatever. Do you have something that you might consider the Dave Reid like signature move when you're editing or in your videos or in your style?
Well, I've always tried to inject a bit of a sense of humor into my videos. In tech tutorials, that's kind of difficult.
Sure.
I certainly have a particular style of colors and kind of a corporate style of doing stuff, because I did so much kind of work in the business world with graphics and stuff. So I've always kind of, leaned towards that a bit. I'm not a great artist, like to sit down and draw a picture. My stuff's pretty rudimentary. So that's probably part of the reason I gravitated more towards a business style of look and feel. Once you kind of know my style, if you see a video that I've edited, you probably can recognize that it's me that edited it. I know when I first started editing, I used to do too much. I would put in all these fancy effects and was doing all this weird stuff. And it was too much. It was distracting. And now I'm kind of known for, like when I do transitions, I don't use a lot of them, and what I use are generally pretty subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm cutting together a bunch of talking head video, a lot of people will use, kind of wipes or pushes or stuff like that, where I just use what's called a smooth cut. It looks like it's almost morphing from one clip to the next.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I started using to hide the cuts, on talking head videos. If you're careful, when you're talking on something, you watch for where the lips are moving and where the eyes are looking, and you try and match that up from cut point to cut point. And if there's a little bit of a difference, you can use a smooth cut to blend them together, and you can't even tell there's a cut there a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And something that I learned to use when you had to do a cut where you couldn't do that, where it was just obvious no matter what you did, then you hide it in a jump cut instead of using any type of a transition. And for those who don't know what a jump cut is, basically you do your cut, and when you realize it's something you can't blend together, you take your next bit of footage and you just zoom it in a little bit, mm-hmm. so that you're kind of jumping up in zoom or jumping back in zoom. And that's just like a natural way to hide the fact that it doesn't match up.
Yeah.
And plus, it helps to maintain interest from the viewer, because viewers get bored pretty quickly.
It's not just the same picture the whole time. I kind of do a similar thing. This is where, because I record with two cameras, I just did it because looking at some of the channels that I like, I noticed that some of them are using two cameras, and I just felt like it helped to maintain interest, to have a main camera and sometimes cut to a second camera. But what I realized is that was a great way to hide a cut. Like if you're stumbling over words, or there's a big pause, or there's an you cut out the and you cut to the second camera, and that way there's not like a big pause, and then your face is in a different section, in a different area. And then I do the same thing where I'll do a camera push, or one thing I've realized a lot of people are doing is they're starting pushed in, and then they pull out. So I've been putting those in a little bit more. And once again, in Davinci, it's like 2 clicks, man. It's like start of the click, keyframe, end of the click, keyframe, with a you zoom in on one of those keyframes, and you're done, so yeah. So
well, it can be even simpler than that. You can just turn on the dynamic zoom for the clip that you're on. And
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, it's really easy. In the dynamic zoom, like if you go to, I could show you real quick.
Okay, wait, we're going to save that. You were going to show me something. We'll have a get into it section in just a minute. You can show me that also, and that's like in just a couple questions. Okay.
Sure.
Dave's got some stuff for us, guys. So when you're editing, okay, this is specifically editing, okay, do you have something that you might consider a guilty pleasure, that if someone caught you doing it, they may be like, dude, what's going on here? What's going on? But you don't care. You do it anyway.
Probably my guilty pleasure is some of the little animation things that I do for my bumpers. So for those of you who don't know what a bumper is, that's kind of like that little thing you have at the beginning of a TV show, for instance, where they'll start off, they'll maybe show stuff that happened on previous episodes, or maybe they'll tell you about what's coming up on that episode, and then they run the opening credits. Well, in the YouTube world, we call that a bumper, and we usually try and keep it 5 to 11 seconds max.
Right. Yeah, pretty short.
Yeah, pretty short. So my guilty pleasure is I like getting fancy with that. That's the one place I feel comfortable doing something fancy.
Show off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
I like yours. It's good. I was like, ooh, that's fancy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the one where it comes up out of the water and gets hit by lightning.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, if people knew how many hours that took.
Yeah.
For that little, what's that, about 8 seconds, I think, 7 or 8 seconds.
It's not long.
And I think I spent over 40 hours building that.
Wow.
But now that it's built, I could plug a different logo into it and recreate it fairly quickly. And same thing with the one on my other channel. I don't know if you've seen any of those videos to see the bumper, but it basically, you start off, it looks like you're driving down a road at night past lit up billboards. And then you get to the end and you'll see a big burst of flame come in. And then the flame reveals the logo. And then at the end, a couple seconds later, the logo particleizes and blows away in the wind. And that one, I think I spent about 8 hours building that. But once again, I can take anybody's logo, plug it into that, and do the same animation with their logo in a few clicks of a mouse.
How much do you charge for that? I might have you do that for my Miller's Custom Guitars logo.
Oh,
I have a logo, but it's like, so what I did is I just plopped it into Resolve. I played some music over it with my guitar with some reverb and effects, and then I just put like the one of the free Davinci effects over it. It looks like a drop of water. I like it. It's okay, but it could be better.
Well, if I'm building something from scratch, I usually charge $35 an hour Canadian. But if it's something that I've already kind of built and I'm just plugging your logo into it and maybe making a couple of tweaks, $20, $25. It'd probably only take a few minutes, unless I got to recreate your logo from scratch.
No, I have a vector logo, so it's all.
Yeah, so that'd be no problem. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk afterwards, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've been doing this for a while, a couple years, and you've been in the computer industry for longer time than that. But especially especially when it pertains to editing, do you have something that you might consider your favorite or your best moment? Like maybe a specific video that you thought was just like, man, this was just amazing, or a video that hit really hard that you worked super hard and it hit super good, or maybe a customer that was super happy with how their video turned out, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some. I haven't done a lot of like video edits for other people, other than that one client where I edit for his YouTube channel. But most of the stuff I do for clients overseas is building them custom effects, and that kind of a thing. And pretty much everything's pretty happy with the stuff that I do.
That's nice.
Probably one of the videos I'm most proud of is actually on my other channel. I did a video about basically the title of the video is Debunking Vegan Myths.
Okay.
There's a lot of, how do I put this without getting us in trouble?
No one listens to the show. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, well, okay. One of the big myths out there is that, cattle are causing global warming or contributing to global warming because of their, the claim is they fart methane, which cattle don't actually fart, they burp. And yes, they do burp methane. However, that part's true. But as far as contributing to global warming, no, that doesn't exist, because the part of the science that they're missing is the fact that the same bacteria that breaks down the grass in the cow's stomachs, where they have 4 stomachs, the part of the bacteria that breaks that grass down in the various stomachs is the exact same bacteria that breaks down grass when you just leave it out in the field and it rots and turns into compost. It's the exact same bacteria, and it releases precisely the same amount of methane in that process as it does in the cow. So there is actually no net addition to the methane in the atmosphere, and methane is actually lighter than air, so it floats up to the very upper reaches. Part of it will actually escape out into space, and the rest over time converts into oxygen and carbon dioxide. And one of the things that they predicted back in the day with carbon dioxide was that it was going to turn the planet hotter and cause everything to warm up, and then the deserts were going to expand, and we wouldn't have any green left on the planet. Well, it turns out that exactly the opposite is happening. If you look at desert areas from back in the 70s, and you look at satellite photos, you look at it then and you look at it now, and they're getting greener. The deserts are getting smaller because with more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, plants can grow in harsher conditions. So these are like a couple of the things that I talk about in the video, but I did like a ton of research. I spent, days and days doing research and collecting charts and graphs and all this kind of thing. And so it was a very highly edited, highly processed video with all this documentation and charts and graphs from studies and this kind of thing. And I probably spent 40 hours putting this video together, and it's only like a 7 or 8 minute video, something like that. And it's been a really popular video. It's one of the most popular videos on that channel.
That's nice. But Dave, only 40 hours? Like I already mentioned that. I have my current series of videos I've spent the last year working on. Come on, Dave. You gotta up it, man.
Well, I'm really good at research. I can, I can research stuff pretty quickly. I'm actually I'm on the autism spectrum. I've got Asperger's. And so that's actually kind of one of my superpowers is going down a rabbit hole and, doing the research and focusing on something to the exclusion of everything else and until I get, the answers I'm looking for. So a lot of times what I can accomplish in a few hours, it might take someone else a little bit longer to accomplish the same goal.
Yeah. My problem is overwriting, cause like I mentioned, I'll work on my scripts, for, sometimes months, like this current series of videos, I've literally been planning for a year, and I've worked on the scripts for over 6 months. It was going to be one video. I'm like, this is too much for one video. And then it was 2 videos. And I'm like, this is too much for 2 videos. Now it's 3 videos. Right. And I mean, like, my videos are not short. They're, 30 to 45 minutes sometimes because they're, educational videos. And they're, semi, step-by-step tutorial almost, but anyway, whatever.
I will say that on my tutorial channel, there's a lot more prep time goes into some of those videos. I have to do dry runs, and sometimes I'll get stuck on a little problem, and then I have to go off on on a little side journey to figure some stuff out before I can come back to it. I've got some.
I remember what I was going to say.
I've got some video ideas sitting there that they've been there for like a year waiting for me to come back to and finish. And a lot of my videos on that channel, I've got videos anywhere from a couple of minutes for some really quick little thing. But I've got a lot of videos that are like an hour and 20, that kind of thing. So
I remember
it really depends on the genre.
I remember what my point was going to be, which is that, because I work my scripts so hard, but I don't edit them down. I only edit them up. It's like, oh, I also want to say this. I also want to say this. My scripts are usually, 3,000 to 4,500 words, So, I mean, and then I wish I was better at in post on the editing floor being like, I didn't need to say that. I can scrap that out and cutting it down. But anyway, that's something I need to work on for myself. But
yeah, learning how to be kind of vicious with your own content when you're cutting, that's a difficult skill to develop. It took me a long time before I could start throwing stuff away. But I know typically now when I'll film a video for, like a talking head video for my new channel. And, I might talk for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And the final video will be like 12 minutes. Where I just, I basically, when I go through and I'm cutting it, I'm like, okay, does this advance the story of what I'm trying to tell? Or does this add to the knowledge really that I'm trying to tell people, or am I just going off on a tangent? And that's where it takes a while before you can, because I mean, it's your baby, right?
Right.
So it makes it difficult to want to throw it away.
Right.
But what I've discovered over time is that if you're going to keep people interested, you have to really get vicious about cutting out the stuff that doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to you, but if you try and put yourself in the mindset of the viewer and edit from the viewer's perspective, I think that makes it a little easier.
Yeah. Okay, we're going kind of long today. We're going to try to power through towards the end here. Do you have advice for beginners? So someone's listening to us and say, hey, I would love to start shooting footage of the things that I'm interested in and start to edit them into some sort of video. How do I start to learn how to edit? What advice would you give to that person?
Well, there's two sides to it. You know, there's the idea that you've got and filming that idea, getting it down in a format you can do something with. So I think the first step is, even if you just do some bullet points, start off with some bullet points of what you want to cover, and then just try, winging it and do a couple recordings of it, just as practice before you do the real recording you're going to do something with. And the other side of the coin for the actual editing is just remember that your first few videos, your first 20 to 30 videos are going to be just complete jank.
Yep.
They're going to be terrible. Just accept that fact and, use it as a learning curve. And then spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos on channels that show you how to do video editing.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to use Davinci Resolve or whether you're going to use Final Cut Pro or Premiere or whatever it is you decide you're going to use, there's going to be lots of video channels out, or YouTube channels out there with videos showing you how to do it.
Yeah.
And just like what I did when I first started learning this stuff is I dedicated 4 hours a day to watching one of these channels and learning how to do stuff. And then I'd sit down right away and practice it. Sometimes I'd follow along, if it was a more complicated video, after I finished watching it, I'd set up my stuff and then I'd start the video again and I'd go through it and pause and try a couple things and, just keep doing that. And eventually when you do it enough, a switch will turn in your brain. You'll go from, I don't really understand this, but I'll just do it anyway. I'll follow the steps and, it usually works out. But there'll come a day when all of a sudden the switch flips in your brain and, hey, I understand why this is doing it. And then you can start doing it yourself without having to watch the tutorials.
Yeah.
It's all a process. It takes time. And when you've been in tech as long as I have, you're going to pick stuff up a lot quicker. But when you're new and you're a beginner, you can't expect to learn it that quickly. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
So just be patient with yourself. Dedicate, set some time apart every day and dedicate yourself to spending that time to learning.
Yeah, learn.
And
for sure.
It pays off. It pays off.
Another tip that I've found to be helpful is, we all have preferences of things that we like and don't like already. And we don't really realize what we like about it and why we like it. And just start paying attention, so I don't have cable. I don't really watch TV anymore. I mostly watch YouTube. And now I'm making YouTube videos. Once I started doing that, making YouTube videos, I'm watching the YouTube channels that I like, but I'm paying attention to how they're making videos and the decisions that they're making. What are they doing with their cameras? How often are they switching angles? Are they shooting two cameras? And it doesn't have to pull me out of enjoying their videos, but it's just, like paying a little attention to, this is stuff I like. It's, okay, I'm a musician, right? As a musician, like the musicians I listen to influence my music. So as a filmmaker, as a content creator, the videos I watch are going to influence me as well. And so I watch those videos and go, okay, they're doing this. I like that. I might try something like that also. So something like that, to be influenced by your influences is, I think kind of cool. So.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I used to love to do before I even started doing video editing, I was always fascinated with the process of making movies.
Yeah.
So, back in the day when everybody would go out and get their DVD movie, I always made sure I got the special edition ones that had all the behind the scenes footage and stuff on like a separate DVD. And I used to spend more time going through that and learning what they were doing behind the scenes and the hows and whys than I ever did watching the actual movie itself. And I found that process so fascinating. And I think that's probably what led me to decide to do video editing when I started getting well enough to actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so the advice that you're talking about there, that's really, really good advice. Watching what other people are doing and the hows and whys it's so important.
Yeah.
Because it really helps us to understand just the whole process. And
Yeah.
I know it certainly gave me a bit of a running start when I started getting into the video editing, going back to the stuff that I had spent so much time looking at with the behind the scenes.
Cool. So we have a segment on the show, and we can't do it every episode, but sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. And it's called Let's Get Into It. And that's where we ask the guests if there's a way that we can do the topic together in a couple minutes over the internet. And we actually, we thought of a way that we can maybe do something with editing. And we actually tried it a little bit before we started recording, and you're going to share your screen. So this is, I do apologize to the audio listeners, but I'll try to narrate what's happening. But this is definitely one where you might want to click over and watch this on YouTube. But Dave's going to share his screen here, and we're going to, he's going to show us some editing tricks in Davinci Resolve. Okay, so you have, what am I seeing here?
Okay, what we're seeing is the
I love your background.
Yeah. This is the main, when you first start Davinci Resolve, you get where you're going to load or create a project. So I'm going to show you the workflow that I use for this, and then I'll show you how I created that ability. So what I do, instead of just going down here and going new project, I'll actually go in and I'll right click and I'll go import project. And here's some different stuff that I do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go into my tutorials one and I'll just double click that. And then it brings it in by the same name, and then I just rename it. So I'll call this just testing, I guess. And then I open it up. So now you'll see here, I've already got all this stuff in place. So I've got this folder here, and I've got all these, timelines, images, effects, audio clips, music, and they're already loaded with stuff. This is much easier than using power bins. If people don't know what power bins are, that's just a place where you can put commonly used items and access from any project. The problem is I do a lot of work, for different people and for different channels, including my own, and they each have different requirements. So if I had it all sitting in power bins, it would be it's kind of a huge mess. There's just tons of stuff everywhere. So what I've done is I've created basically a template. So what I'll do here is let's start a new project from scratch.
Okay.
Okay, so when you start a new project, you've got nothing here.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start and I'm going to create a new bin.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be kind of the master bin. So we'll call this tutorials. Okay, so I'll create one called tutorials, and then under tutorials, we'll open that up. And now I'll create a new bin. And we'll call this timelines. And we'll create another new one. We'll call this clips. Or you could name it A-roll. You know, if you're doing a lot of stuff with A-roll and B-roll, just name them appropriately.
Okay.
And maybe I'll have one with images. And that's good enough for now for the example here. And then you can go into timelines, and then I can actually go in and I can create a new timeline.
Okay.
And I'll take it off of project settings, and then I can set up my format. So this is like 1440p, but you could come down and you could set it to your basic 1080p. Where is it? There it is. 1920 by 1080. And then you can set up any other changes you want, you know, 30 frames per second. That's typically what I'll use. And then we can just hit create. And then if you're going to use multiple timelines, then you can set that up. So I might come in here and just rename this to 1080p.
So when would you use multiple timelines? Because I've never needed to do that or even know why we would.
Well, for instance, a lot of stuff I do in 1440p. And occasionally I might need to do like a backup. So, you know, if I'm working on 3 or 4 different versions of something, or if I'm doing something that I think might screw everything up, I'll make a backup timeline. That's one reason. Another one is sometimes I'll take the same footage and I'll create something in 1080p and another one in 1440p, and then I might do a YouTube short, right? So I'll have all those different timelines, and then I can take all the same footage and assets that I've loaded in and put them into the different timelines. So if you're only using one timeline, then, you know, just put in the one timeline. And then you can drag if you've got clips that you're always using the same thing of, you know, like I might have, you know, the different bumpers and stuff that I might use and other assets. So, you know, I would come down into my power bins and I would take some stuff, and you can just drag something from your power bin. Let's say I got a call
What's a power bin?
Oh, that to get to power bins. Let me see if I can remember.
What even is it? I've never even heard of that.
Well, it's like a central location where you can store stuff that you can access from any project without having to go and manually find it all the time.
Oh my gosh, I need that so bad.
So once you've got it in your power
it's like
bin,
it's like the stuff that you use on every video, like your bumpers and your images and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I need to use a power bin.
That's what
You're helping me, Dave. You're helping me.
I mean, that's what I started off with using power bins for. But now that I'm using this new method, I still keep stuff in there, but I do it all with these templates now. So let's say I've got. Here's a couple of effects. That's another folder I might normally have is an effects folder, but I'll just drop this into clips. So you can just take from the power bin, you can take these things and drag them over to any of these bins that you've created up here. So then I might take, let me see, what's another one I might take. I think this is an older call to action thing that I built. I might drop that over there. Well, I guess that's good enough for the sample. So if I go back up to here and go into clips, now you can see there's these 3 things I dropped in.
Right.
So what I'll also do is let me hide this. I'll go into, if there's anything in any way I set up Fusion that I'm always going to want, right? So I can right click in here and maybe I'll go and I'll set up my arrange tool. So I might set it, to grid and auto arrange. Under options, I like to use orthogonal pipes, right? So I'll go set up that stuff. And then I'll go to the color page. If I got some stuff I want to set up in there, I'll set that up. Same thing in Fairlight if I've got filters and stuff that I normally use. So for instance, I might come in, for my cooking channel, for instance, if I'm recording stuff out in the kitchen, I used to have a lot of background noise. So I've got like this restoration plugin that I bought for noise reduction. So I'll bring that in and maybe I'll set it up kind of as a good starting point. And we'll shut that down. And then I'll come in here and I'll set up an EQ. I've already got some EQs that I built. So I might set up my EQ, and then I'll come in here and I'll set up my dynamics. So this is for compressor and limiter and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll set that up the way I like it. And then on the deliver page, I'll come in here and I'll set up the most commonly used options I use. So I might come in and I'll set it to MP4 and H.264. I'll select the video card for encoding, so my AMD card. Set the resolution. Now you can actually set a different resolution. I could set it 1440p here and it'll upscale for me. I don't have to use a separate program to do it.
Yeah.
And then I can set any options here. If I've got subtitles that I use, maybe I'll pop that down, tell it to export my subtitles. And
I don't think you can do that in the free version, the export subtitles. So
no, you can't. So ignore that part.
I'm just a little jealous because on my guitar videos, I will actually, after I render the video, then I pull it into Descript, and that's how I get the subtitles. Because the podcast, I don't really care about subtitles, but on right. the other channel, I want subtitles, and so I'll pull it into Descript, render the subtitles, and then upload as a separate file. So,
well, the beautiful thing about the paid version, if I want to set up the subtitles, I don't have to do it manually anymore. As of version 18, I go up to Timeline, I click on Create Subtitles from Audio, and it goes and just generates them automatically. And then I can go and alter the style a little bit.
Yep.
So once I've got everything set up the way I like it, then I'll save the project. And then I'll go up here to File.
Okay.
And I'll go Export Project. So it brings me back to where I keep them. You can put this wherever you like. And you notice it's got a DRP extension.
Okay.
And just name it whatever you want. And then you save that. And then what I showed right at the very beginning, where I right click and I go in and I import a file, this is what I'm importing.
So you're basically, so just to summarize, you did all that, and you're basically creating a project template that imports all your settings and your frequently used clips. It imports the way that you treat your audio, the way that you your basic settings for color, your basic settings for exporting, your all that stuff, and you're saving that as a project template. And then whenever you start a project, then you're importing that and you're starting from scratch, so you don't have to set those every single time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to use that.
You would not believe how much time that saves.
No, I believe it, because that's stuff I have to mess with every time.
Yeah. So this dynamic zoom thing that we were talking about, I'll show you that real quick. So this is a project I did a little while ago. The reason I've still got it not archived is because I'm going to be doing a tutorial where I show people how to edit talking head videos, some of the things that we've already talked about. But so if you want to do a dynamic zoom, all you have to do is right here where it says dynamic zoom. So we just go over here. This is in the upper right. So we just we open that up, and you see it kind of zoomed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a couple different things you can set here. But where the real magic happens is you go over here, you pop down this little overlay selection,
Okay.
and you pick dynamic zoom. Now you'll see you've got two squares here, or two rectangles, one in red, one in green.
Yeah.
So the green one represents how far you want to zoom in.
Yeah.
And the red one represents where you're starting from. So I can bring this in a little bit, so I can start in a little bit zoomed in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it just applies to that clip that we're on. So if I go back to the beginning of the clip, all right, so now as we play it, you'll see, in this case, it's zooming out.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to flip that around,
Mm-hmm.
let me see here. I think I can just hit the swap button over here on the right.
Oh, that's way easier, man.
Now it'll zoom in.
Oh my goodness. Like the way I was doing it wasn't hard, but that's way easier, man.
Oh, a lot faster too.
Oh, so fast. Okay, I'm definitely doing that. Dave, you're saving me so much time. This is amazing.
Yeah, so there's, it's tricks like this that you learn that speed up your workflow. Yeah. This is why I can edit a video. Well, first it's this guy that I do videos for on another channel. I do a couple a week for him. Even if he's got 5 or 6 clips that I'm editing together and doing a few things, I'm usually done in under an hour.
Oh my gosh!
And that includes doing that's the thumbnail,
to edit.
That's uploading, that's SEO research. Maximum time I spend on his videos is 90 minutes, and that's on one that's really complicated and I'm doing a lot of fancy stuff. Otherwise, usually an hour start to finish and I'm done. And it's really easy.
Nice. Cool. Well, thank you for those tips. That was awesome. There we go. Okay, so Dave, for you, with your editing journey, what is N+1? What is next on the horizon for you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're moving. So that's going to give me, right now you see all this junk on the on the shelves and everything, all this big mess behind me. That's going to go away in the new place.
Yeah.
So
you're going to have a dedicated studio space or what?
Well, kind of. I mean, the new apartment, like the apartment that we're in right now, when I moved in here, I was in a wheelchair and I was bedridden pretty much. So, it's a wheelchair accessible apartment. So they don't have real closets. There's no storage space. What would have been the storage room has our own stackable washer and dryer kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, and there's not a lot of shelf space because a lot of where you would have cupboards is open so you could get under it with a wheelchair, that kind of thing. So now that I don't need that anymore, we're moving out. I took the wheelchair back, that kind of thing. So the new place we're moving into, it's about the same size. It's a 2-bedroom. The living space is actually a little bit smaller, but it's got tons of storage and actual real closets. So
nice.
Everything will be behind closed doors. So you'll see like a more normal studio. In the background will be maybe a bookcase with some books and tchotchkes and stuff, and closet doors, and I'll set up some nice lights and that kind of thing. So I'll have like a more proper YouTube studio.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to be, the new place, we're on the ground floor, so we've got a little patio outside. So I'm going to be setting up a bit of an outdoor kitchen that I'll be using for my other channel.
Nice.
For the health channel. And that's basically where I'm going to be going with that. I went back to school. I'm taking an online course. I'm getting my certification for being a wellness and life coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be specializing in coaching people on the diet that I use to put all my autoimmune diseases into remission.
Nice.
And a whole host of health issues that I used to have are pretty much all gone now. So I've got some back issues. I still need some back surgery, but that's, yeah, I mean, the diet that I use, it's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's pretty simple. And There's literally hundreds of thousands of people that are using it now to heal all kinds of diseases, including things like cancer and type 2 diabetes and all kinds of different chronic diseases, even mental illness. Like I've got bipolar, and since I've been on this diet, I was on the diet about 3 months and the bipolar went away completely.
Wow.
I talked a little bit about that I've got Asperger's, but actually my Asperger's symptoms are down about 75%.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So I'm putting more and more energy into this new thing because I'm so passionate about what it's done for my health and how it's changed my life completely.
Yeah, it's understandable for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going next. I'm going to be really developing that side of it. I'm still going to be keeping up on doing tutorials and stuff.
Yeah,
I still really enjoy doing that, and I've still got a lot I can teach people. But where I used to do 2 or 3 tutorials a week, now I'm doing one every couple of weeks, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And the new channel, I'm doing 2 or 3 videos a week, sometimes more. Plus, I'm getting tapped for interviews and stuff. I've actually got another interview later today where I'm going to be talking about the diet side of it.
Yeah.
I'm being interviewed by a fellow. He's actually, I think he's in our group.
Yeah.
But he's down in Indonesia, Jakarta.
Oh, wow.
So
worldwide. Nice.
Yeah, I've got an interview with him in just a couple hours.
Cool.
So.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I wanted to give you a chance to plug your channels. Definitely your editing channel, but tell us about this health channel too. How can people find you? How can people connect with you? Tell us about your channels. So, yeah, you just tell us about it. I'll put links in this description and everything.
Sure, that'll work. So I've got the main tutorial channel, of course, is on YouTube, and then I've also got the YouTube channel for the health stuff. And
what are the name of those channels?
So the tutorial channel, that's Fuzzee Tutorials.
Okay.
If you look down at the bottom, right about there, you'll see how I've spelt Fuzzeedee. So it's just Fuzzee spelt that way, tutorials. So you can just do like the Fuzzee Tutorials all together, one word. And then the other channel is at Fuzzee Road to Health.
Okay.
And I'm on Instagram with the same thing on both of those, at Fuzzee Road to Health and at Fuzzee Tutorials. And also on Facebook. I've got facebook.com/Fuzzee Road to Health, and then there's facebook.com/Fuzzee Tutorials.
Great. Yeah. And check out his channels, especially if you're interested in editing tips. He has tips about Davinci Resolve and OBS and a bunch of other things. And then especially if you're interested in learning about his health journey and how to eat healthier, I was checking out a little bit about that channel too. So it's pretty cool. So, but before I let you go, David, I got the 2 silly questions I ask everybody. And this is literally my favorite part of the show. I would do the whole show for just these 2 silly questions, which is number 1. I want you to say a sentence or 2 and casually drop the name of the most famous person that you've ever met.
Oh, let me see.
And you're Canadian. It might be weird.
Yeah, it probably is going to be weird. I actually built a website for a guy by the name of Howie Meeker.
Okay. I don't know who that is.
Now, Howie Meeker, back in the day, he was big in the NHL. He was like an announcer.
Okay.
And he used to be an NHL hockey player at one point. And he had, once he retired from doing that, he started up these hockey schools. So all over Canada, there was all these Howie Meeker hockey schools. And so he used to be on NHL, Hockey Night in Canada. He was always on that. The Peter Puck cartoons were his brainchild. And I think he even narrated some of those. Wow. So he's probably the most famous person I've had any real interaction with.
That's awesome. And of course, it would be a hockey player. You dang Canadian. All right, cool. And I got one last question, but we'll get you out of here, which is, in your opinion, what is the greatest all-time cartoon theme song?
The greatest cartoon what?
Cartoon theme song. Come on, man.
Oh, I really like the theme song to Roadrunner.
Roadrunner?
Yeah.
What?
Betcha.
What's the Meep Meep? I mean, what's the Roadrunner's theme song?
Well, they had this whole little. I don't know if I can remember it anymore.
I'll have to look it up.
I haven't watched one of those cartoons in decades, but
I don't know.
you know,
if
they
I've
had
ever
this
heard
whole
this
little
one.
thing where they talked about, you know, the coyote was always chasing the Roadrunner. He could never catch him, and you know, they
I'm
had
gonna have
like
to look that one up.
Yeah, they had the whole musical thing in this little song, and
yo, I'm gonna have to say this is the first one. You're the first guest that has mentioned one that I have not heard at all. No, sorry, that's the second one because Ryan Lochi said Captain N, and I'd never heard that one either. So this is number 2. The second one I'd never heard. So I'll have to check out.
If I had to pick one that you've probably heard
no,
of,
that's fine. Your answer is your answer is valid. You don't have to justify my existence with your preference. That is great. That's a great answer, and I'm sure it's amazing. I will go check it out after the show. You know what? I'm going to find a link to a YouTube video of that, and I will put that in the show notes if you guys want to hear the theme song for Roadrunner. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Dave, and your insight and your tips on the editing. I will definitely use those. I'm going to use power bins. I'm going to use the dynamic zoom. I'm going to use all that stuff. That's amazing. Listen, guys, thank you for sticking around this long. If you have, if you liked this episode, hey, just click like. You know, if you're on YouTube. That's a great way to show that you appreciated the show. If you know, an even better way would you should share it with someone that you think might like the show. And you know, all of us on YouTube, Dave included, we all want the subs, man. You know, it doesn't cost you anything; it helps us out. That'd be a great way to help us out. And if you're listening on an audio player like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you know, you can give us a heart, you can give us a review. That would be amazing. Otherwise, until next time, this has been Adam from the N+1 podcast saying, don't be a jerk.